Hey, Simon here with another Too Many Projects, and today I've got a spring, a belt, and a theory about why this machine isn't working. So, in part one, if you didn't watch it, we're having a little bit of trouble with this lawnmower starting to run forwards and the cylinder's starting to run before it's supposed to. While it's idling, the cutting wheel will just start to occasionally catch and start moving off. And after I got the engine sorted out, a little bit of basic maintenance, I couldn't get it to move anymore at all. I couldn't get it, it wouldn't catch. And one of the problems I found while I was doing that was that this clutch here, the two parts of it had moved apart. So the drum, which is fixed here in place, is hard up against the clutch piece, which was not attached to the drive shaft tightly. And my theory is this: I think the reason it was kind of working, kind of not working before, was that where this clutch part was loose on the drive shaft, it was gaining some traction on the drive shaft and then losing it and gaining it and losing it and moving in and out. And the problem is because the reason this is quite hard to move is probably because the little shoes on here aren't moving. And so it's kind of stuck closed. So what I'm going to have to do, I think, to get that out, unless I can find another way, I'll take this panel off first in case there's another way, but then otherwise I'll get the 4 bolts that hold the engine down off and I will shift it all over to the left to get a look at this piece. All right, that's the side panel there. Chain is looking good and greasy, so that's positive. Chain also seems very, very tight. Don't think it's meant to be that tight. I will check the manual. I think I'm just going to unbolt the engine. I think that's the way to do it. It's only 4 bolts. Now, I've never tried to move the engine before, but I think those 4 bolts mean... Oh, look at that. Super easy. So that is the clutch that was hidden by the drum before, and as it spins, whichever way it spins, doesn't really matter, I guess I'm not taking it off, these fling out with centrifugal force, gripping this drum. And I thought they were seized. They're not. They're actually in really, really nice condition, and they're all very free moving. So I will just put it back together and I will move on to theory number 2 I've now got, which is that this chain is solid as a rock. But before I do that, I'm going to clean all this up and then shove the engine back in. Chains are not perfect all the way around, and neither are sprockets. For some reason, there's some kind of science, they can't make a perfectly circular sprocket. It's not possible. But the point is that when you turn a chain on a bicycle or whatever it is, it's got tight points and loose points. And this one is easy to move there, but as I go round, it gets tight. It gets really tight right there. I think this chain's too tight, and I'm definitely right because I've just checked the manual, but you should always see slack in the chain, and the way they generally measure that slack in manuals like this is you should be able to move this chain a certain distance. In this case it's 13 millimeters, and that ain't moving anywhere. Not the correct tool. There we go. So with that tensioner off, I'm actually going to use the spanner because it's a good one, and that is 13 mils of slack. So I'm just going to be measuring. Oh my goodness, 13 mil is a lot of slack, you know, and that was really tight in comparison. So if we go from the center of the nut there, it hardly needs to be tight at all. Lowest point, highest point, that's all it needs to be. So perhaps with that tight point not binding anymore, got a lot less resistance for the clutch to overcome, the friction in the clutch to overcome before it starts moving. Look at that, nice and tight though. And so that's like, it feels like it's loose, right? But it sure as hell ain't coming off those cogs. And so that, I think, will release the resistance in the drivetrain quite a lot. We'll get that back together then, and I'll open up the other side. Now, on this side of the machine, there we go, I've got a new belt and a new spring to go in. I don't think this is going to make much difference to the clutch on that side, but it's hopefully going to give us a little bit more of a definitive drive when you pull the drive lever. At the moment it's kind of random. So we're going to remove this pulley here. If I pop that little hole there, there's a ridge behind, and if I get a really expensive screwdriver and just shove it through there to the back, it kind of locks against that ridge, and we're able to just undo this. Nut. That just slides off, don't lose any washers or anything. And that's our old belt off. This is the old spring, by the way. You can see how stretched out it is. And so the cable just comes in here, and the little bracket links it onto this tensioning wheel there. And the spring, I guess, is just for a little bit of extra springiness. We'll just pop that on there. I do want to replace the cable later, but I'm not going to do that today because I haven't got one. Belt over the front pulley, in between the tensioners, like that, around the rear pulley, and just slide that on there. It's much tighter. Then just need to tighten down that rear pulley and pop that plate back on. Right, so I'm losing the light again, as always happens with these projects. Let's see if we can get it started. Don't forget to put the spark plug lead back on. And I'll put the grass bucket on, because if I can get it started, I want to quickly mow the lawn. Despite Monty Don's advice not to mow the lawn, it is spring now, and I want to, so I'm going to. No life. Maybe a bit less, Jack. Oh, that's good. There we go. So as I move up the revs, it starts spinning, and then as I move down the revs, it goes off again, which is what we're going for. Okay, next question then. If I move up the revs and then pull the power, what's going to happen? Oh, that was right. Yes, we have lift off. So this shocking state of affairs is what I managed after 2 passes. I reckon about 10 or 20% of that cutting blade is actually doing any cutting. But that's okay, because the clutch worked and the drive clutch worked as well. So it was going when I pulled the lever, and the cutting disc was stopping when I put the revs down. So that's a great success. I'm going to leave it there for now because it's getting dark once again. But part 3, I'm going to look at that cutting disc and see what damage I did to it when I hit a copper pipe. See if we can't line it up or find a replacement. But like and subscribe in the meantime. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.